Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. My name is Taya and this is Fable, my dark fairy tale island. And today we're working on a major chunk of this island in the middle by resident services. This is going to be our crowded village center, and it was looking quite messy before I started this process. I have been doing some custom design testing in this area to see what would work and what wouldn't work, and decided on something that I liked. Of course, I've already done all of the initial terraforming, so the beginning is kind of chaotic. Like, I'm adding in a building here and there and then working on a little bit of the custom designs just to break it up and not like lose momentum on this build. So let's just get right into it. I started by moving Able Sisters and building an incline on the left here. As you could see, I already moved Nook's Cranny into place and put an incline on the right-hand side of resident services. I want this to feel very close and almost claustrophobic without feeling hard to walk around. And in the end, I think I did strike a good balance between having a lot of items in a small area and making it walkable, and that you weren't going to be like tripping over things or running into stuff all the time, and that the villagers actually still walk through this area, which was a huge bonus for me. I started with Able Sisters because I had already moved Nook's Cranny into place. I don't know if I literally just mentioned that. I think I might have. But then pretty quickly I time travel and we continue moving buildings. I did take a second to clean up all of the paths that I didn't really want for this version of this area. I have been doing a lot of testing, laying custom designs over in-game pathing to see which one I like the best. I ended up going with the dark dirt pathing with a brick pathing over top. Kind of makes the brick the actual shade that I would like without having to download a new custom design or make one myself. And on this day, I did make a bit of an error. I put down a stone staircase, but then I had the museum plot in my pocket ready to go, and I just never looked in my pocket again. So when I time traveled to the next day, I still had the museum in my pocket. So anyways, whoops, I just paid Lloyd and then continued on with what I was doing for that day, forgetting about the museum in my pocket. And I decided to change the location of this house plot here. Originally, I wanted it kind of further back and like set more into the area, but then I realized that was going to make it way too claustrophobic. This one as well, I felt like I wanted to be able to see that house plot between Nook's Cranny and the other plot. So I moved it so that it would be more centered between these two buildings and kind of create a little bit of a better flow for this area. And I moved this house, like I was saying, closer to the edge because I realized it's not really going to work to put items in between the houses and the lower level. And what I'm going to do is actually surround almost this entire build, with medieval building sides and castle walls to create a fencing without actually having to put an item onto the second level. So it makes it like a fake fence, but it's actually on the bottom level, if that makes sense, so that I can maximize the space that I have on that second level without cramping it up too much. It was kind of a balance because I did want it to feel crowded, but I didn't want the claustrophobia to actually feel real, if that makes sense. And here's the next day. I ended up checking my mail, and then when I opened my pockets, I saw the museum moving kit there. You dummy. And I'll run up to the area so that you can kind of see what we've put in so far. This incline, and then Able Sisters, and this incline here. And I had marked out accidentally 8 spaces for the museum instead of 7, which I realized pretty quickly. And I tried to figure out how I wanted to place this museum down. I ended up going with this placement so that the left side of the museum was lined up with that incline, and I feel like that worked for this area. And then I just removed a couple spaces extra that I had because I wanted to have 2 spaces on either side of the museum. That's how I wanted to decorate it. So I just put the museum in place. And the next incline that I want to add is going to be a log staircase behind here. This is going to lead more towards the forest, and I'm going to have a diagonal bridge once you come down this incline. So there will be water here, but I just wanted to remove it so that I had a clean slate to work with on this area, and I could place down this bridge right at the base of the cliff going backwards. And I said bridge again. I do that so often when I'm talking about inclines. I'll say bridge. It will never cease. Nice preview on this one though. Really helped me make this decision. Really helped me lock it in. Thanks, Lloyd. I very quickly went to the next day to kind of avoid my shame of of forgetting to place the museum, and we grabbed Dina's house to put it in place over here in this little neighborhood area. I'm also marking out today the other areas that I'd like to put villager houses in with some vertical board fencing. I can't remember for the life of me whose tip this was. It's not an original tip to me, but just to get some additional height into the area so that I can see it more clearly what this area is going to look like, I did think adding fencing around these buildings was a very helpful thing to do. And this incline that's going reverse is kind of similar to the one on the left there. It's going to lead towards a diagonal bridge on this side as well that leads into the forest. My overall concept for this dark fairy tale island is that there's this little bustling town area surrounded by a mysterious and very dangerous forest filled with magical things and animals, and of course then all of these tales get told in the village for the kids not to leave the village and to be safe at night and all this stuff. But I feel like having it kind of surrounded by water and foresty areas makes it even more mysterious, kind of adds to that vibe a little bit. So as I mentioned earlier, I'm putting fencing around each of these plots to see how the spacing is going to work out. And then I'm doing probably the biggest portion of this build, which is putting down in-game pathing and then putting down custom design pathing over top, just to get that brick pattern looking even darker, because that is the one that I want to use. I do this thing, and I haven't done it for a little while on an island. I tend to break up the brick, so there are edge pieces within this brick tile set. So I'm placing like the right tile down and then leaving a little gap, putting the left one so that I can put flowers in between and just kind of make it look a little bit cracked and worn down, like it's an ancient road that's been there for a really long time in this village. Nobody's done any upkeep on it. And then up here on this level for the museum, I'm just doing like this pebbly kind of design. So I'm also rounding out the corners here of this area so that it's just like a nicely flowing. I do delete some of these little tails that I've made that are only one tile wide because that kind of looks strange, but then I'm putting in this kind of bumpy tile. I will put all the custom designs that I've used in the description below, but if you're ever curious about any of my custom designs, I have a very robust Pinterest board with all of my islands kind of by theme or by name listed there, and then I always make sure to pin every single custom design that I use there. This process definitely took some time though, but I think because it is a major feature of this whole village area, it makes sense to spend some time on it and make sure that I like it before I put items on top of it. This brick design is one that I would like to rework for myself and maybe even make it a little bit more bumpy and add some fun details into it, but I think it's a great base. And I love how there's certain bricks in shadow, so it really makes it feel like textured and uneven and messy, which is perfect for this little town area. I feel like because it has been a while since I did this kind of pathing, it took me a little bit to get back into it, and I wasn't as like one and done as I would have been in the past. I was going back and forth and like forgetting what I had done with the pathing and having to switch in between. Ultimately, it's almost better to put down all of the middle tile and then go back and add in the cracks wherever you want them. But I was also trying to plan out where I wanted to put some flowers in as well. It's funny that I was even planning that because I ended up changing them around so often during the rest of the process that even though I had planned for areas for flowers to go, some of them didn't work out or I added more. This is the first pass of the flooring and I'm including everything for some reason so you can see my chaotic process because, I mean, after producing a hour and 45-minute long video, I'm a lot more comfortable now that I know you guys like that kind of thing to put out a longer video where it's worth it and show my process a little bit more. And I really like that. I really love sharing the whole process of a build. It kind of demystifies it a little bit. And it's really nice to put on Animal Crossing video and just like chill out and play on your own island too. I definitely love that. It makes it feel a little bit more like there is a community, which there definitely is, alive and well, still playing Animal Crossing all the time. And it's a Wednesday today. I'm feeling like so distracted today. I don't know what it is. I'm just constantly fighting with my urge to go on Amazon.ca and search for anything to just distract myself, adding items to my cart for no reason. Do you have a cart open on a website? Do you have an Amazon shopping list going right now and you're like, I'm probably not going to buy 20%, maybe 100% of these things. I have a pair of really cute shoes in my cart right now, and I do have an occasion for them that I am thinking about. I even put a little matching clutch handbag in the mix. So yeah, I keep finding myself like forgetting that I'm halfway through this voiceover and just on Amazon.ca being like, what would be the perfect dress? Hey, you've looked at all of them now, Taya. You're gonna have to press purchase on something. I actually did get a couple of dresses secondhand. All that aside, I finished up this pathing that I was working on here, putting in flowers, and then went to the next day, which was very, very rainy, and I put down Huck's plot right over here. Since putting this plot down and getting this village area completed, Huck actually asked to leave, so as per usual, I'm live streaming at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Saturday, which is tomorrow, and we'll be hunting to fill this plot. I'm hoping for Pecan as the ideal villager to get, or Prince. Prince would be amazing. The only other villager that I'm looking for is Fang, but I have his amiibo card, and now that I have all of my 10 plots filled, I can amiibo him in. Anyways, it's a dark and dreary day on Fable, and subsequently on this treasure island that I was going to pick up some supplies. I'm just kind of showing you a brief overview of the things that I'm picking up. I also grabbed a boatload of fencing, and then I'm grabbing like all of these structural pieces, and we're gonna get a little sneaky peek of the flyover so far with the building that I've done. It's not come that far yet, so it's still pretty blank on the, especially on the side that I'm showing here, but also a little look at how the entrance build came together from a top view. Even that's not fully finished yet, but I'm super happy with how it's looking. And I don't know why I didn't just time travel out of this gloomy day, but it kind of adds to the whole dark fairy tale vibe. I did already have a day chosen for the final dream address of this island, and it's kind of more like foggy, misty, kind of almost sunset. I tested out different types of castle walls and everything, but the castle walls and the medieval building sides don't quite line up when they're vertical, so I had to play around with it a lot, and I had to play around with this area behind resident services as well because it ended up being like an odd number or an even number. Either way, I wanted to put a half space on the left and the right, so it was like an odd number once I removed one space. So I ended up kind of shimmying these around a little bit so that I could leave a 3 tile gap in the middle where I'm gonna use a castle gate instead, so that I can like kind of fudge the spacing a little bit, but it'll be be behind resident services anyways. That was the solution I came up with, but there was a lot of this kind of stuff, just me shoving things around and replacing them and then picking everything up and putting it back the way that it was before I realized, oh yeah, the castle gate is 3 tiles wide, so I'll just use that one somewhere in the middle here. Colton just decided to get back here behind resident services with me. I didn't even understand why I couldn't fully move until he walked out from behind there, and I was like, you little jerk. So I tried to keep the medieval building sides facing forward, and then whenever I was going vertical, I tried to use castle walls instead. I know I just put medieval building sides on Lilith there, but I do end up changing them over eventually. I went to go and dig up my first flower that I was digging up there, and my shovel broke, which was funny. The only reason why I'm even moving this flower or trying to move this flower is because I thought I wanted to do this, put the stonework kitchens or other items on the inside to give these buildings, quote unquote, from below this section in resident services a little bit more depth so that they feel real. In the end, I end up removing them because it's just making this area feel way too claustrophobic. And I'm putting in storefronts beside the buildings that make that look a little bit more thick, I guess. Those buildings are looking thick with 3 C's. I just think also it's nice that the storefronts always have a light on. I always appreciate that it really does look like there's always villagers home. It doesn't have to have a villager home or harm. Man, my throat is also really bothering me today trying to do this voiceover, so I'm just gonna turn off my voiceover for a second, give my voice a little rest, put on some music, and I'll see you when I have something else to say about this area. I think I might have found one of my favorite new fences, which is the tall lattice fence, but it added a lot of depth to that area and to everywhere basically, because it gives that kind of like old but very tall still, which is nice. So it gives a little pattern, a little interest, especially just layered in a few choice little spots. Not all this fencing ends up staying where it is, but I think it was very good to like kind of get a vibe for layering things. And I end up putting in as well some hedge fencing around, which adds even more dimension. I love hedge fence. I think it might be my favorite. It's such a basic thing to be like, my favorite flowers are white cosmos and green mums, and my favorite fencing is hedge fencing. But I mean, come on, it's just like so OP. I also love the spooky fence, but the problem with that one is that it's just a little too short. I'm always hoping that it will just be like a little bit more tall, add a little bit more interest, that it just misses the mark sometimes. So I think that this taller fence is gonna work out great. And I'm putting down those little grass standees in the fall color. I'm obsessed with them. Here's another little progress flyover so you can see how we're going already. I don't know why I include the entrance in every single time I show a flyover, but I'm just really happy with it. I'm also trying to analyze it as I'm rewatching it this many times to see like what would I add into the entrance to add a little bit more interest there. I had to go to Treasure Islands quite a few times to get enough castle walls and medieval walls, and then I picked up some castle gates there and a castle tower because that really added. I find when you're doing a transition between two, I don't know how to describe this, like when you're stepping down the terraforming by 1 square, instead of having 2 different like castle walls that overlap to do that transition to make it look a little more natural, adding in a castle wall can help you make that transition between vertical layers or horizontal layers between tiles. Am I making any sense at all? Trying to describe this is like so impossible. If I think of a better way to describe what I'm explaining, I'll make a short video about it or something. But basically, if you were to put a castle wall and then a castle tower beside it and a line the top part of the castle tower with one castle wall and align the bottom of the castle tower to another castle wall, then you could make a transition that works better between two different tiles and step it down slightly. I'm gonna stop talking about this because I'm gonna make myself crazy. You can see it there. I'm not going crazy. Anyways, it took me a little bit of time to get all of those castle walls filled in along the back of this area. They're still not quite done. I still have to go to another treasure island and get even more castle walls. It used to be simple panels, right? We'd all load our storages full of simple panels, and now it's like you need simple panels, you need castle walls, you need medieval building sides, you need storefronts, and stone kitchens. Don't get me wrong, I'm thankful for all these items, but man, I've been playing Pocket Camp recently on the phone. I purchased it and I've been playing Pocket Camp Complete, and oh my gosh, the sheer number of items in that game is absolutely crazy. And I still have not mastered being able to decorate in that game. I have been enjoying decorating my little cabin area in that game, but that's because it's like a predictable room. But the campsite, I'm like, I need to look up some inspiration for that because I am so lost. It is just the Wild West over there. I'm kind of giving a little tour through this area to show you what I've been working on. It looks super cute so far. I love the way that it looks during the day, that you can actually see all the little details and things. It's all well and good to have it be dark and gloomy out, but I really do feel like I'm gonna have it be more of a misty, dark-ish sunset kind of vibe on the final dream address. And I'm putting in finally all these castle walls along the back. This felt amazing to be done with. In hindsight, I would not have built the museum, and I would have put all these castle walls in before I even built any of this terraforming, but that takes a lot of planning, and I definitely didn't have that foresight. And I had to take down a couple because of the way that these storefronts needed to be placed. I needed to, you know, build up some terraforming so that I could place all of these storefronts down in the right direction. I do like how these storefronts look when you're up on the museum level. The storefronts kind of look like a really low fence, but it really does give that kind of castle fortress vibe. Like this is the highest point of the village where people are gathering, kind of like a church would be in some of these older like fairy tales. I would guess that they'd have some kind of like gathering spot, but it's kind of meant to be more of like a fancy place that's set aside from the dirt of the common people. And I accidentally picked up the wrong color of wheat field here, but I kind of ended up liking the mix of two different kinds of wheat fields. It feels a lot more like some of it's a fresh grass that's just grown and some of it's more like been there for a long time. I don't know why I place down items like this. Sometimes it's like my brain can't figure out how else to place it down, so I do the most awkward placing of something down and then having to shove it for great distances. But the wheat fields are some of my favorite in this whole area. Really makes it feel run down, but not in like a dirty way. You know what I mean? Like just in a life is really hard and we can't be bothered to pick the weeds every other day that grow beside our house. It's not that important, but we will plant some flowers every once in a while. I feel like I would love for this in a different variation of this kind of village to be a little bit more bright and fun, but I think that I would verge onto like kidcore if I went in that direction, and I kind of wanted to feel more authentically medieval than like a kitschy, what's the word I'm looking for? Oh yeah, camp. I don't really want it to feel truly like a very campy version of a fairy tale. I want it to feel like an old storybook. And so I do have like a grandma's house in the wood that I've made since doing this build, and that has more of a classic storybook verging on camp kind of vibe. But for this city center, I just wanted it to feel more like an actual medieval village. I feel like I was fighting for my life trying to describe that. And speaking of fighting for my life, this was another area where the math of the symbol panels kind of threw me off. And it should have been an area where I used a castle tower. Oh my god, after explaining all of that, I'm like, this was the perfect situation in which a castle tower could have helped me make the transition between two different levels. But what did I do? Shoved things around for far too long on this area, then ended up building up a little bit of terraforming anyways, and just using a castle wall to do the transition. It's fine. It's like behind Nook's Cranny. I'm not gonna worry about it. I chipped away a little bit at this terraforming so that I could have a castle wall make that turn and go against the terraforming there beside the incline. And I did do that also on the left-hand side to make that like cliff edge a little bit less visible. Yeah, that's what I ended up going with. That could have been a castle tower. I might actually change that to a castle tower in the future. I completely forgot that I did that. This build is so odd because it really is not a very large space on my island, but it is a big build because there are so many buildings and inclines, and I'm surrounding it all with castle walls and everything. So even though I'm keeping the decorations fairly simple, like I'm going to be adding more stuff in once I kind of get the ground placed. And yes, I'm going in with fencing, the hedge fencing now, and starting to add more items in, which is when it's, you know, of course, getting more and more exciting. It is one of the first builds that I'm doing on this island too, so I didn't have a whole lot of items, which is why I had to go to treasure islands a lot to pick up stuff. But when you have to do that, you kind of have to have those items in your mind already. So it did take me some time to place down items and then be like, oh, I'm not sure about that. Oh, what would work here is this thing. I used to feel like I was kind of cheating by layering fence. I was like, that always looks good when you just layer fencing or you change the fencing halfway through. It's like gives the illusion that you know what you're doing when it comes to decorating somehow. I don't know if that's always true, but I would say try it. If you're unsure of what to do in an area, just put down some nice custom pathing and then layer some fencing on it, and you will be surprised at how cute it looks. Already, this flyover is looking much more complete, looking much more put together. I'm obsessed. There's still so much open flooring that my villagers really do walk around in it a lot, which is like just such a win for me. I don't know if anybody else cares about that, but when the villagers actually walk around in a build, it just makes me so much more happy than having a build that they can't really get to or seats that they can't really sit on and that kind of thing. Even though for the design, sometimes it will look way more amazing. I'm obsessed with these street lights, just thinking about lighting in general when I'm going through a build and being like, I need some tall lighting, I need some vertical elements, but street lights get me every single time. And I never really use these like street lights with banners on them. I would like to customize these with a like custom Fable flag in the future. That would be very cool. I would love to do that. Also, I feel like the way that I just said flag was so Canadian that it sickens me. Just saying just now that I felt Canadian made me literally want to go to Tim Hortons and get a coffee. It doesn't take much to convince me to go to Tim Hortons and get a coffee. It doesn't take me much. I saw an ad for a eggnog latte, although that's a Starbucks drink. Anyways, we're getting near the end of this build and just a couple more final touches, and here are some shots of the build. What is your favorite holiday drink? It can be like a hot chocolate or an eggnog or an apple cider or like something maybe a little bit more adult, maybe a spiced rum and eggnog, something like that. Let me know what your favorite holiday drink is, and here are the final shots of this new build on Fable. Thank you so much, everybody, for watching today. I hope you have an awesome rest of your day. It's Friday now, so if you would like to join us for villager hunting tomorrow on Saturday, then 3 p.m. Eastern Time, which is Saturday, the 14th of December, we're going to be hunting for a new villager for this island if you'd like to drop by. But there's a lot more builds to come on this island, so stay tuned. I'll see you on the next one. Bye, everybody.